The truth about the United States-China contest and its impact on the world order. Could the US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan be the tipping point for a new world order? The recent visit by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan, which China sees as part of its territory and in fact had warned against such a visit by a high-ranking US official, has just spiked the tensions between the two economic giants, and even the international community is quite confused as to what this means for global prosperity. This move by the US is seen as condescending to China, and in fact, China had early on warned that Washington will pay the price in case the US defied its advisory against visiting Taiwan. The visit by Pelosi made her the highest-ranking American politician to visit the island in 25 years, which China warned against and even threatened a Chinese military response in case that happened. Of course, the visit happened and China didn't respond through any invasive military action it had earlier on threatened. Rather, there was a pressure from the Chinese Foreign Ministry condemning the visit. On the other hand, it is reported that the United States was ready for any eventuality, and that visit alone cost the US taxpayers over $50 million. It may look like the waters are calm, but the heat has permanently been turned up on the already strained Washington-Beijing relationship, and most definitely is bound to impact the new world order. For us to appreciate the intricacies of all this, let's delve a bit into some history and also discuss some facts and figures about the US and China. The truth is that tensions between the US and China are anchored in economic prosperity and desire of both countries to be the leader of the world. Of course, the current most powerful nation in the world is the United States of America, owing to its economic exploits, positioning at the frontier of science and technology advancements, heavy investment in education, having mechanisms for food security for its population, and heavy military presence on land, air, and high seas across the world. The tension between the US and China has aggravated because China has grown rapidly over the past few decades, specifically over the past 3 decades, and is actually catching up to the United States on most of these elements. Key to gaining the unspoken global leadership, which of course is bound to be established in the next few years, because history and cyclic rise and fall of nations has always been clear since the 1600s to the Second World War, through which the US emerged victorious and became the leader of the world. Unfortunately for the US, its desire to stretch its global leadership to at least a century might not see the light of the day. This because, as a nation, its expenditure on defense is very, very huge. In fact, making the United States' proportionate expenditure on health look like a joke. And it has to keep spending heavily on military and defense to ensure it safeguards its borders and be at the frontier of catching any threats globally. Things are not looking fancy on the economic front either for the US. Its national debt has grown exponentially over the past few years, and this is because of expenditure lines around defense and so forth are inevitable. These are drivers that are actually making their budget swell and swell. Beyond that, the drivers of the GDP are not helping the situation either, because the US is driven by service industry, while its competitor China, Russia, etc. are heavily driven by manufacturing, in which they enjoy economies of scale owing to cheap labor and easy division of labor systems, because the grounding of their systems have never being anchored on absolute capitalism compared to the United States. Having said that, let's now put some figures to all these, and then at the end, you are going to be the judge as to how the New World Order is most likely going to look like. First, let's look at the economic perspective, which by the way shows that China has been bridging the gap between it and the US on the frontier of economy for the past 30 years. The United States and China are the two largest economies globally in both nominal and PPP methods. US is at the top in nominal, whereas China is at the top in the PPP since 2017. In fact, that is after it overtook the US. As of last year, that's 2021, both countries together share 41.89% and 34.75% of the entire world's GDP in nominal and PPP terms, respectively. The GDP of both countries is higher than the third-ranked country Japan, nominally, and India PPP-wise, by a huge margin. Therefore, this means only these two countries are actually competing to become the first, because the third countries, regardless using which methodology, are way far compared to the US and China. As per projections by the IMF in 2021, the US is leading by $6,000 billion or 1.36 times on an exchange rate basis. The economy of China is INT 3,982 billion. This on exchange basis with the US at or 1.18x times of the US on the purchasing power parity basis, the PPP. According to estimates by the World Bank, China's GDP was approximately 11% of the US in 1960. But as of 2 years ago, that's 2019, it is 67% of the US GDP. This tells you that over the past 40 years or so, China has managed to close the gap with its economy compared to the US by about 55%, which is a positive signal, and in case this trend continues, it automatically tells you that China is bound to surpass the US on either matrices in the next few years. Secondly, let's look at the geopolitical perspective. We are all aware of how global map looks like. The US is quite afar geographically to the rest of the world, most so specifically rest of developed countries. Of course, we know the US is very close to the largest Southern America and Canada, but for the rest of the developed countries, the US is quite afar compared to China, which is perfectly located in the ecosystem of developed countries, making the movement fluid and so forth between these different countries. It borders, for example, we're talking about Korea's borders, for example, Japan, Russia, India, just to mention a few. This somewhat gives the US a tactical advantage in case of war, since the wide stretch of the high seas it has is a good buffer for surveillance and curtailing any aggression. Being the world leader, it has meant that the US has had to overstretch its budget on defense line compared to China, and statistics show just that, because in 2019, the US remained the world's top military spender by far at about $649 billion US dollars. China was distant second at about $261 billion US dollars. The US is the world's top military spender, followed by China as a second distant. Also, political systems in the two countries vary greatly. The US political system is anchored within a framework of constitutional federal republic and presidential system, driven by democracy, whereas the political system in China is authoritarian, meaning that politics in China is run by a single party, the Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP, headed by the CCP General Secretary, who tends to be the paramount leader of China. Not to be a castigator of any of these two sovereign nation systems, but we both know one of these two country systems is suited for the long-term country's game plan of stability, whereas the other country system is suited for ensuring there's internal control through hook or crook. Of course, the latter is going to be suitable in case of those impulse or impromptu decisions that need to be made, because it won't require for any leader to go through bureaucratic processes. That aside, let's look at how this is bound to impact the social sphere too. The anchoring of this divergent political system also inform the social development of both countries. Of course, we see, for example, in China, there's loads and loads of curtailment of key freedoms, for example, around speech, around just, for example, even people being able to criticize government for its misdoings and so forth, as compared to the US, where it has formidable system and people are free to express themselves without really facing any form of aggression from government. Having said that, the common jointer between these countries is that all of them know what it takes for a country to be at the frontier of the global or the world order. Having said that, both of these countries are striving to either jump to the frontier or maintain control on key aspects such as ensuring security of their borders and ensuring there's no aggression within their territories, ensuring there is law and order internally, ensuring they are at the frontier of science and technology. That's why even we see of late expressed by China around the space. Also, they understand there is need to ensure they be at the frontier in matters education, research, and most importantly, they appreciate they need to be at the frontier on matters economics. Whether we're looking at it from whichever metrics or whichever items which are used to measure economic prosperity out there, they know they need to be at the frontier and, matter of fact, be ahead on all the possible economic matrices. As I look to conclude, I have 3 questions for you. First question, for how long do you think the US will continue to be the most powerful nation globally? Secondly, do you think China is the country that is poised to replace the US as the world leader in the next few years once the new world order is established? Then thirdly, what geopolitical alliances will be formed prior to establishment of a new world order? And which nations do you think will constitute different geopolitical formations? Kindly share with us your thoughts down below in the comment section. Many thanks for watching this video. My name is Afagza Sifuna, and as always, it has been my pleasure to engage your creative juices and share my perspective on what is happening in this world of ours. Thanks a lot. Till next time. Bye-bye.